Was it one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind? Or one of the most enduring conspiracy theories of all time?
We didn't go to the moon, and that is an established fact.
One of the most popular U.S. achievements was putting astronauts on the moon. However, no other singular feat has generated as much controversy as this, with many researchers claiming it never happened. But now, some of the Apollo astronauts have come out to express their views, and they are saying people don't realize the mistake of the moon landing. Between Neil Armstrong and Harrison Schmitt, 12 men have walked on the moon. The latter was the first ever, while the latter was the last man and will hold that title until NASA lands another set of astronauts on the satellite. Many of them, including Apollo astronauts, unable to remain silent in the face of many narratives about the huge feat, have responded to claims about the authenticity of the lunar landing. For many, the whole thing was staged, and they point to alleged evidence of their theory. Picture this: a barren alien landscape. A solitary American flag is planted with pride, but the flag, it's moving? In the silence of space, in the vacuum of the moon where no wind can possibly blow, the stars and stripes mysteriously ripple and flutter. This singular anomaly from the moon landing footage has been the main ingredient for many theorists for decades. In the footage, as the astronauts plant the flag into the moon's surface, the flag waves and ripples, much like a flag would on a breezy day here on Earth. This animated display seemed to contradict the basic laws of physics. If there's no wind on the moon, what mysterious force could possibly be making the flag dance? Given the lack of air on the moon, the fabric dynamics would be quite different than on Earth. On our planet, a piece of fabric stops waving relatively quickly due to air resistance, but in the vacuum of space, with no air to slow it down, any movement imparted to the flag might continue for much longer. Could it be that the simple act of planting the flag imparted a motion that, in the vacuum of the moon, lasted longer than expected? Or is there a more mysterious narrative at play? A closer look at the flag raises even more questions. Unlike the flags we're familiar with, the Apollo 11 flag had a horizontal crossbar. This was intended to make the flag appear to fly proudly, given that there's no wind to keep it extended on the moon. However, this addition became a point of contention. When the flag was unfurled, it didn't extend fully, leading to a wavy appearance. Was this just a technical oversight, or a flaw in the props of a supposed elaborate ruse? The dynamics of motion in Earth's atmosphere versus the moon's vacuum cannot be understated. Here on Earth, we're so accustomed to how objects behave in our atmosphere that the moon's vacuum can seem outright bizarre. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, especially when there's little to no resistance against it. The flag's movement, to many, seemed a blatant indication of an earthly environment replete with wind and air, suggesting the possibility of a soundstage rather than the stark landscape of the moon. The frame rate at which footage is captured can also significantly influence our perception of motion. Some argue that the fluttering flag could be an optical illusion due to the speed at which the film was recorded and played back. While this point veers more towards a technical explanation, it adds yet another layer to the intrigue. Was the flag's apparent motion a mere trick of the camera? Several astronauts who walked on the moon, from Buzz Aldrin to Alan Bean, have spoken about the flag and its behavior. Their explanations and descriptions of their actions with the flag offer insights into why it might appear as it does in the footage. Yet for many skeptics, these first-hand accounts are not enough to dispel doubt. Instead, they serve as scripted narratives to hide the truth. The American flag, with its rich history and symbolism, became an even more potent symbol when it was displayed on the moon. It represented not just national pride, but also the culmination of the space race, a contest of technological prowess and geopolitical posturing. Given its significance, the flag and its peculiar behavior became an attractive target for those skeptical of the moon landing narrative. To many, the flag's flutter wasn't just an oddity, it was the smoking gun. It's worth noting that Apollo 11 wasn't the only mission to plant a flag on the moon. Flags were also planted during subsequent Apollo missions. However, the footage and photographs from these missions didn't seem to draw as much scrutiny as the inaugural Apollo 11 flag? Is this because the first flag was the most striking, or because once a narrative takes root, it's challenging to shake? The flag's behavior isn't just a standalone anomaly for theorists. For many, it's part of a broader tapestry of doubts and questions. The fluttering flag, for them, is a gateway, an entry point that leads to more profound questions and skepticism about the entire moon landing. The fluttering flag kerfuffle has become emblematic of moon landing skepticism, even finding its way into films, documentaries, and TV shows. Another major argument is that the moon appears too bright in the photos and videos taken by the astronauts. They claim that this is evidence of artificial lighting and that the moon should be much darker. What are the reasons used to back their claim? One is that the moon has no atmosphere, which means there is no scattering or diffusion of light. The only source of illumination is the sun, which casts harsh shadows and creates a high contrast between light and dark areas. The sky is always black, even during the day. However, the photos and videos taken by the astronauts show a bright and uniform sky with no stars or planets visible. This suggests that they were taken in a studio with a black backdrop and a powerful light source, right? Another reason is the moon reflects only about 12% of the sunlight that hits it, which makes it a very dim object in the sky. The Earth, on the other hand, reflects about 30% of the sunlight, which makes it much brighter than the moon. In that case, the moon should not be able to outshine the Earth in any photo or video taken from its surface. Yet, the photos and videos taken by the astronauts show a glowing moon that dominates the horizon, while the Earth is barely visible or completely absent. This suggests that they were taken with a special filter or lens that enhanced the brightness of the moon. Also, the moon's surface is covered with fine dust, which absorbs and scatters light. This reduces the reflectivity and brightness of the moon. The dust also creates a phenomenon called opposition surge, which makes the moon appear brighter when it is directly opposite the sun. This effect should be visible in some of the photos and videos taken by the astronauts, but it is not. Instead, the photos and videos taken by the astronauts show a smooth and shiny surface with no signs of dust or dirt. This implies that they were taken on a clean and polished set with no real lunar soil. Also, the photos and videos taken by the astronauts show no signs of lens flare, glare, or overexposure. These are common problems that occur when a camera is pointed at a bright light source, such as the sun or a spotlight. The absence of these effects suggests that the photos and videos were edited or manipulated to make the moon look brighter than it really is. Alternatively, it could mean that they were taken with a high-quality camera that was not available to the public at that time. The photos and videos taken by the astronauts show no stars in the background. This should be impossible since there are no clouds or atmosphere to block their view. The stars should be clearly visible and much brighter than on Earth due to the lack of light pollution and atmospheric interference. The lack of stars suggests that the photos and videos were taken in a studio with a black backdrop. Some people have tried to explain this by saying that the stars are too faint to be captured by the camera, but this is contradicted by other photos and videos taken in space that show stars. Also controversial is one thing you would least expect to be shadow, or, more accurately, mismatched shadows. First and foremost, anyone with a basic understanding of light and shadow would know that a single light source, like the sun, should create consistent shadows. However, in some of the photos taken by the Apollo 11 crew, there are shadows of different lengths from objects that are practically the same distance from the light source. If this event were taking place in an earthly studio with multiple light sources like, say, studio lights, we would expect these varying shadow lengths. But on the moon? Think again. Shadows cast by a distant light source like our sun should be nearly parallel due to the vast distance of that source. And yet, in several of the Apollo photographs, there are shadows diverging, as if cast by a nearby light source. What's going on here? Was the moon landing perhaps shot in a studio where different light sources inadvertently produced these non-parallel shadows? And we come to the astronaut himself. One of the most iconic images of the moon landing shows Buzz Aldrin descending the lunar module's ladder. The sun is behind the module, which should cast Aldrin in complete shadow. But lo and behold, Aldrin is illuminated. Critics and skeptics vehemently argue that this seemingly impossible lighting could only be the work of supplementary lights, like the kind used on, you guessed it, a movie set. And what about the puzzling sea rock? In one of the photographs, there appears to be a rock with a peculiar marking that resembles the letter C. This might seem like an innocent detail, but think about it. Would a natural rock on the moon have a perfectly lettered imprint? Or could it perhaps be a prop, mistakenly placed upside down, revealing its label to the camera? Such a slip-up would be laughable in a high school play, let alone a global spectacle like the moon landing. In addition, shadows on the moon are expected to be pitch black due to the absence of an atmosphere and scattered light. Yet in many photographs, details are clearly visible within these shadows. It's almost as if there was an additional light source filling in these areas, revealing what should be hidden in the profound dark. On Earth, ambient light explains this phenomenon. On the moon, theorists also point out that some photographs from the moon landing depict strange bright spots or hot spots on the lunar surface. These appear as if there's a powerful spotlight shining down, similar to what one might see in a stage performance. In a genuine lunar environment, with only the sun as the light source, such a concentrated bright spot would be an anomaly. The presence of these hotspots has left many speculating about the authenticity of the lunar setting. Now, looking closely at the photos of the moon landing, you might notice one thing conspicuously missing: some form of impact crater. The lunar module's descent engine, designed for the landing procedure, should logically have blasted away the surface dust and created a noticeable indentation or impact crater on the moon's surface. After all, the descent engine was capable of producing a thrust of 10,000 pounds. Imagine the sheer force of that. Yet, mysteriously, the surface beneath the landed module is eerily untouched in the photographs. Given the physics of the situation, we would expect a powerful stream of exhaust from the LM's descent engine to create a distinct impression on the lunar surface. On Earth, even less powerful engines can kick up a storm of dust and clear surfaces. Surely the LM's engine, operating in the moon's vacuum with no atmosphere to diffuse the thrust, would have produced a pronounced effect. Yet, the images show the LM sitting atop a pristine surface, with not so much as a smudge beneath it. Furthermore, keen observers have pointed out that even the footpads of the LM appear to be merely resting on top of the lunar dust, without any substantial sinking or creating any deep impressions. This is despite the fact that NASA claimed the lunar surface was covered in a thick layer of dust, which would be expected to shift and mold around the weight of the LM. Then there's the second curious case, the absent moon dust. The lunar surface, as described by official sources, is coated in a layer of fine regolith. It's said to be so fine that it's almost like powder. This presents an intriguing puzzle. With such an environment, any disturbance, particularly the landing of a spacecraft, should result in this fine dust being launched into the airless environment, creating a haze or even a cloud. Here's the thing, there's no air on the moon to slow down these particles. So when the LM descended and its engines blasted against the surface, it should have sent thousands of these tiny particles flying in every direction. And without any atmosphere to cause drag, these dust particles should have remained suspended for a considerable time. Yet, scrutinizing the official NASA photos, the scene is crystal clear. There's no suspended dust, no misty haze, just the lunar module and the lunar landscape. This clarity is even more baffling given the aforementioned lack of an impact crater. Where did all that energy from the descent engine go? Why didn't it scatter the moon dust everywhere? Furthermore, during the astronauts' extravehicular activities, the dust kicked up by their boots settles quickly, almost as if there were an atmosphere. This is yet another perplexing observation for those who question the authenticity of the moon landing. As far as theorists are concerned, these anomalies suggest a few possibilities. If the moon landing was staged on Earth, possibly in a studio or a secluded location with a prepared set, the absence of an impact crater and the missing moon dust could be a result of oversight or technical limitations of the time. After all, Simulating an entirely new and unfamiliar environment, like the moon's surface, would be an immensely challenging task, even for the best set designers and special effects artists of the day. Another possibility floated is that the photos released to the public were altered or manipulated to present a cleaner or clearer image of the moon landing. This would explain the discrepancies, and would also imply that there was some reason for the original images not being suitable for public consumption. Theorists have also reported suspicion with what appeared to be televised delays during the event. To begin with, consider the incredible challenge of broadcasting live from space in 1969. At that time, we were barely capable of transmitting color television broadcasts from one coast of the United States to the other. Yet we are to believe that NASA successfully sent back clear, uninterrupted footage from 238,900 miles away? There were instances during the broadcast when the feed would experience delays or slight interruptions. NASA will argue that this was due to the vast distance the broadcast signal had to travel. However, this brings up a more significant question. How were these delays accounted for in real time? In the 1960s, there was no buffering technology as we understand it today. Any delay would essentially interrupt the flow of live events, potentially exposing the hoax. According to known physics, a signal sent from the moon should have a 1.28-second delay to reach Earth, meaning that if Neil Armstrong had said something on the moon, we on Earth should have heard it roughly 1.28 seconds later. But during the live broadcast, the responses between Houston and the astronauts were too immediate, too snappy, lacking the significant delay one would expect from such a vast communicative chasm. This immediacy has been claimed as a substantial rift in the narrative of real-time communication from the lunar surface. While some parts of the broadcast seemed suspiciously immediate, other segments had noticeable delays, often at moments that could have been seen as technically challenging or revealing. These inconsistent delays further fanned the flames of skepticism. Why would some parts of the broadcast have seemingly perfect transmission while others stuttered or paused? Critics argue that these delays were intentional, giving the production crew on Earth time to adjust, correct, or even censor parts of the broadcast to ensure the public saw a flawless mission. Such inconsistencies suggest not the vagaries of space communication, but a stage-managed show. Perhaps the most glaring evidence, however, is the unexplained 2-minute blackout during the broadcast. At one of the mission's most critical junctures, the screen went dark. What was NASA's explanation? A technical difficulty. This would have been convenient, because just as we're about to witness history's most significant achievement, there's a technical glitch. This blackout has been suggested to have given the alleged production crew ample time to recalibrate, set the stage, and ensure that the next scenes were perfectly curated for public viewing. In a real, unscripted event of this magnitude, such blackouts would be unacceptable, if not downright suspicious. One argument made to counter skeptics is that independent parties, like the USSR, tracked the Apollo missions and would have exposed a hoax. However, focusing on the televised delays, it's essential to understand that tracking a spacecraft is one thing. Verifying the content of a broadcast is entirely another. While external parties might have been able to track something going to the moon, they couldn't peer into the spacecraft or verify the origin of the broadcast. The televised delays could easily have been manipulated without arousing suspicion from external trackers. They were watching a dot on a radar, not verifying the legitimacy of a TV broadcast. It's also worth noting that the press did not get a direct feed of the moon landing. Instead, they had to film it off a projection screen, further degrading the quality and making it even harder to spot anomalies or mistakes. This method conveniently prevented any independent analysis or recording of the original broadcast. In a world where the press plays a crucial role in disseminating information, this step seemed more like a strategy to control the narrative than a technical necessity. Now, imagine for a moment a modern-day scenario where a major event is broadcast with inconsistent delays, blackouts, and restricted press access. The public and media would immediately cry foul, doubting the authenticity of the event. Why then should the moon landing be exempt from similar scrutiny? The irregularities in the broadcast are just as suspicious now as they would be in any other context. Apollo astronauts, however, have come out to defend the lunar landings as authentic. They have also expressed their frustration and anger at the conspiracy theorists who accuse them of lying and dishonoring their achievements. Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, famously punched a moon landing denier who confronted him in 2002 and called him a coward, a liar, and a thief. Aldrin later said that he regretted his action, but he was provoked by the man's insults and harassment. Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, rarely spoke publicly about his experience, but he once said in a 2005 interview that he felt sorry for the people who did not believe in the moon landing because they were missing out on a great adventure and one of the great things of the 20th century. Alan Bean, the fourth man to walk on the moon, said in a 2009 documentary that he was not bothered by the conspiracy theorists because he knew they were wrong and he had nothing to prove to them. He also said that he understood why some people might doubt the moon landing because it was such an incredible feat that it seemed unbelievable. Harrison Schmitt, the last man to walk on the moon, said in a 2019 interview that he was amused by the hoax claims because they were so absurd and illogical. He also said that he had no patience for the people who spread them because they were wasting their time and energy on something that was not true.